Hi everyone, it's Nicole here today for Mama Elephant, and I have a designer series project featuring the new Sunday Stroll Stamp Set and Sunday Sentiments, as well as some of my other favorite Lawn Fawn dies. I'm going to start out with this small frame from the Polaroid Fun die collection from Mama Elephant, and I am going to die cut this 4 times from some smooth white cardstock. I'm going to be using not only the actual frame, but the inside piece as well. So everything here is going to be utilized for my card today. Not only am I going to cut this from white cardstock, but I am cutting this from black cardstock as well. I didn't videotape this part, so you won't see that, but that is going to be the layering piece that gives a slight shadow to these frames on my card. I like the way the frames look with a little bit of a black shadowish type border. I think it makes them pop a little bit more. If any of the dies stick inside, or any of the die cut pieces stick inside the dies, take a poking tool or a needle or a sharp pin of some sort and just poke them right out in the little holes provided in the dies themselves. So here are the 4 squares that are the inside piece, and I am going to take stamps from this Sunday Stroll Stamp Set and create some little scenes or little photographs, if you will, using the stamps from this collection. So the first 2 I used the largest boy and girl, and I decided I knew I was going to do 4 frames, but I thought it'd be kind of fun to create a couple of more scene type photographs, if that makes sense. So I'm going to stamp the fire hydrant, which I purposely stamped kind of at an angle. I tried to make them a little imperfect. So I have the fire hydrant, a little dog, and then a dragonfly. And then there's this cute little heart trail that I thought would be fun with that dragonfly. So there is my 3rd frame, which is a scene. My 4th frame is also going to be a scene, using the mailbox, the girl, the individual letter. I'm going to stamp that so it looks like she's holding it in her hand to put in the mailbox, or she's taking it out or something. A little piece of grass there at the bottom. I'm going to start coloring these in. I'm going to speed through this pretty good, but I am going to, all of the marker colors I am using are listed in the upper left corner of the screen. So if you're wondering exactly which Copic markers I've used to color in these images, that is where they are shown. They are also linked in the supplies on my blog post that coordinates with this video as well. I'm going to get the face colored here on the first image. I'm using about 3 shades for the skin tone, and trying not to oversaturate the paper too much so that it bleeds outside, although I think it did bleed into the collar a little bit. Luckily, I'm going to be coloring in the jacket with some reds, so that will cover up any of that bleeding. One thing I've found with the B21 that I'm using here for the stripes on the ball cap that this little boy is wearing is it bleeds, and I oversaturated the paper too much trying to blend out the B24 and then the B26. And so it did bleed just a tiny little bit. I don't think it's too noticeable, and I went ahead and left it and didn't redo this. However, be careful with that B21. It has a lot of colorless blender in it because it really does tend to bleed a little bit. I forgot to turn my video camera on for the yellow there, so the colors for the yellow were Y08 and Y15, I believe. I've listed them previously when I was coloring the blue stripes on the ball cap. For the jacket, I'm using R24, R46, and R39. Again, these images tend to be kind of small. I did get outside the line just a tiny little bit underneath his arm and then right next to that jacket pocket. I'm coloring in the sky around the images with some blue greens with BG000 and BG01. That's going to disguise some of those little oopsies where I got outside of the line. So that's going to blend it out enough that I think it's not too terribly noticeable. The majority of the background is the lighter BG000, but I did trace around each image with the BG01 to really kind of highlight it and give it a nice shadow. I thought it might make it faster to go ahead and color in anything that was going to be red all at once on the 3 remaining images. I kind of stopped doing that part way through so I could finish each individual image, but it did work a little bit. It's just however you want to color them. So anything that I wanted red, like the dress on this little girl, the hearts, the fire hydrant, are all with the same red colors I used for the jacket on the little boy in the first little square image. These are R24, 46, and 39. Gonna get those blended out. I did pretty quick coloring here. The shirt here for the little girl is going to be blues, mostly B21 and 24. I think maybe I did go in with a little 26. Very, very careful there. I didn't want the bleeding that happened before to happen again. I'll color in the skin on the next image. I'm using E21, E23, and E25. I tend to err on the side of caution when coloring in pretty much anything, but especially the skin tone, and I will gradually build up the color. So it starts pretty light, and I generally don't pull out my mid-tone color as far as I need to and have to go over the skin a couple of times. I'm going to color in the hair with some neutral gray markers here, N5 and N9. There's not a lot of hair showing, so not a lot of need for a ton of shading. I decided to go ahead and make her hat and her top red, and then we're going to make the little jumper and the stripe on her cap white by just using some cool gray markers here as soon as the red is all colored in. Again, I'm using R24, 46, and 39. I tried to keep it pretty easy. If anything was going to be red, I tried to keep it to the same red colors. The blue, same blue colors, and so on and so forth. Going to trace around my image with that BG01 and then fill in the rest of the frame with BG000. It's a really pale aqua, but it just gives a nice little touch of color. Here's a little bit of C2 now to give the little dress she's wearing a tiny bit of color, even though this is white. And then I did have a little drop, it looks, of ink from maybe one of the browns that I used for the skin. And I just blended that out with my C00. I'll go ahead and color in the skin on my third little kid image. I'm using E00, E11, and E13 for this one. Same process as before. I tend to start a little too light, so I need to pull out a little more color. And I ended up not even blending out that last application of E13. I'm using N5 and N9 for the little boots there. And then I'll use YR21, E19, and E33 for the hair. It does show E51, but I covered that up. That was too light and not the right color that I wanted to use to kind of create this reddish blonde hair. So there's a little E19, and here I'm going in with E33. And that's going to definitely give me a better mid-tone color. Go ahead and color in the mailbox red. I decided I would use that color for the mailbox. For the letter, I'm using C2 and then blending it with C1. And my C1 marker, I just filled it and I overfilled it, so you can see it globbed a huge thing out there, almost ruining my entire image. I was so mad, but I kind of dabbed it up as quick as I could, and then I'm going to blend out my background to hopefully disguise anything that bled there. So in this instance, I think I kind of was able to fix it, but that was really completely my fault for overfilling my marker when I used the refill. So I'm just blending out where it bled just a little bit with that red underneath the mailbox with a little BG01. A little E25 and E21 for the mailbox pole, and YG25 and 17 for the grass. And that is, I'm almost finished. I've only got the one image left now. I'm going to do a little N5 and N9 for the fire hydrant for the parts that I have not already colored in with reds. Get those blended out. And then for the dog, I'm going to go with E21, 23, and 25. This is another example of using the colors that I already had out. This card uses a ton of different colors, and I didn't want to go and pick out any different colors, so I tried to stick with something I already had out on my desk. Just like with the faces, I tend to start too light and then have to work my way up, but I would hate to have to scrap the whole project because I started too dark and I didn't have anywhere to go. I'm just using some random colors now for the dragonfly, a little yellows, and I'll use a little brown here for the body of the dragonfly in a bit. Back to my BG000 and BG01 to color in the background. Really fast, quick coloring to fill that all in and to finish up the last little photo frame. I'm going to die cut the rest of the pieces that I need for my card now. This is this great hello die from Mama Elephant that I'm going to die cut from some Doodlebug solid paper from a 6x6 paper pad. I'm going to die cut that from the pattern paper as well as black cardstock so I can give it a shadow and give it a little highlight and really make it pop off the card. Then I'm going to use this stitched rectangle from the Basic Frames die collection from Mama Elephant and die cut that from a red pattern paper. Has a subtle star design on the back. And then for the frame, the scallop frame, I die cut that from that remaining blue cardstock. Now I'm going to use a powder tool to swipe a little bit along that red layer, and then I'll stamp my greeting from the Sunday Sentiments Mama Elephant stamp set using Versamark ink and sprinkle on a little white embossing powder. I really wanted it to pop since I'm stamping this greeting on a pattern paper. So to make it really stand out, I stamped it with Versamark and then heat embossed it with white embossing powder. I am ready to put my whole card together now, so I'm going to just build up these layers. I started with that scalloped rectangle, then my pattern paper rectangle with the stamped and embossed greeting, and then I'm going to put together each of these Polaroid frames. I'm going to slightly offset the white frame over the black frame and then tuck one of the little photos there that I created with the Sunday Stroll stamps underneath, and kind of overlap these all the way across the top 2/3 portion of the front of my card. Finish this last one here. Kind of tuck them this way and that. Kind of look like they're just scattered there. I'm going to use a little Doodlebug washi tape to tape up the frames on my card. I played with the arrangement of the washi tape quite a bit. I'm using some blue, white, and red. I at first taped them all across the top, and then I thought I'd tape a little bit along the bottom, but it wasn't really working. I thought it was too much. So what I ended up doing was removing a little bit of washi tape, which you'll see in the finished card. I'm going to go ahead and adhere the hello on top of the black die cut hello. Again, this gives it a nice little shadow by slightly overlapping the pattern paper blue hello on the black one. And that will finish up the greeting for the card. I'm going to rub off any of those little glue dots from my adhesive that may have been sticking out. And there's what the washi tape looks like, with some washi on the top of the frames and some on the bottom. And then I have a whole bunch of confetti cut from some silver sparkly glitter paper using the Mama Elephant confetti die. And I just grab that, and I'm using the quick stick tool and a little matte medium to glue down an assortment or a scattering of this fun silver confetti. So in the little hearts and stars. Very, very easy and fun, and a great way to finish off a card design. Thanks for watching this Mama Elephant Designer Series project video showcasing the new Sunday Stroll Stamp Set, as well as the Sunday Sentiment Stamp Set and other Mama Elephant dies. The supplies I've used to create this card are listed and linked below the video on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.